Now let's dig a little bit deeper into the ESXi and vCenter server architecture. Exactly what are these and how do they work? Well, let's start off with our hardware. We have CPU, memory, storage, and networking. These resources are what make up a physical host. So if you think of a physical server in a data center, it's always going to have CPU, memory, very likely some local storage, and a network interface card. On top of that server, just like you would install the Windows operating system, you're going to install the ESXi hypervisor. And that hypervisor comes with a number of infrastructure services, of course, depending on your vSphere edition. Things like memory overcommitment, so that you can use more memory than what you physically have in the host. The VMFS, or the VMware File System, the Distributed Resource Scheduler for load balancing, thin provisioned storage, which is effectively storage overcommitment, storage and networking I/O control, and the distributed switch. You'll also have application services as part of the vSphere hypervisor, things like vMotion to move running virtual machines, storage vMotion to move running virtual disk files, high availability, fault tolerance, replication, and the hot add of CPU and memory resources to running virtual machines. All of this is in the vSphere hypervisor, and it's managed by VMware vCenter. On top of that software layer, you're going to be able to create your virtual machines. And one of those virtual machines, most likely, is going to be your VMware vCenter server. Other virtual machines could be Windows Active Directory, management servers like vRealize Operations, and your critical company applications like database servers, web servers, financial applications, and transaction servers. So at a high level, this is the architecture of a vSphere infrastructure. You have one server, but typically multiple that make up a vSphere cluster managed by VMware vCenter and virtual machines running on top of the vSphere hypervisor. Inside each of those virtual machines, you install a guest operating system, for example, Windows or Linux. And on top of those guest operating systems, you install your applications. The applications and the operating systems don't know anything about VMware vSphere. It's almost magical. All of the hardware resources that the guest operating system needs to consume, CPU, memory, disk, and networking, are virtualized and presented to the guest operating system as virtual resources managed by the vSphere hypervisor. So what exactly does vCenter provide? Well, first off, the management of your ESXi hosts. These are the physical servers in the cluster where you installed the vSphere hypervisor. Virtual machine management is also provided by vCenter. You'll use vCenter to create virtual machines, configure those virtual machines, and power on those virtual machines. vCenter provides templates so that I can easily clone a virtual machine into a template library and then create 1 or 100 virtual machines from that template. vCenter is also a centralized repository for performance data, statistics, and logs for the entire vSphere infrastructure. It manages any tasks, events, and alarms that happen in the infrastructure, resources, and all connections for other virtualization-aware applications. It's the connection point for your vRealize Operations management server, third-party backup applications, and more. Before we go, I want to show you something real cool here. This is called configmax.vmware.com. It's a really cool little website created by VMware to find out the configuration maximums. And if you take the VMware Certified Professional certification exam, the blueprint tells us that configuration maximums are fair game, so you should have some idea of what the configuration maximums are. If we go to this website and click Get Started, it's here that you can find the configuration maximums for every VMware product out there. So I've selected VMware vSphere, and I've selected vSphere 7.0, and here you can specify if you want the virtual machine maximums, vCenter maximums, vSAN maximums, exactly which maximums you're looking for, and it provides all of that data here. You can scroll down and you can see the configuration maximums for a virtual machine in vSphere are that you can have up to 256 virtual CPUs in a virtual machine, up to 6,128 gigabytes of virtual memory per virtual machine. These are some incredible numbers, and you can export all of this to a PDF file. You can collapse this, and we can look at, for example, let's just look at vCenter server maximums. We'll click View Limits. And here, vCenter server maximums, you can manage up to 2,500 ESXi hosts per vCenter server and up to 40,000 powered on virtual machines per vCenter server. I'm not going to read all of these, of course, but it's really cool here that you can just simply click on each one of these, view the limits, and find out, for example, that an ESXi host can have up to 1,024 virtual machines per host and up to, for example, 16 terabytes of memory on each host. Now, most of us will never reach these maximums, but they are good to keep in mind when you're designing your vSphere infrastructure, and especially if you're preparing for a certification exam. So again, that website is configmax.vmware.com.